Call this hearing of the Judiciary, Finance, and Civil Law Committee to order. Today is January 19th, 2023. We do have a quorum, so the first thing on the agenda will be the minutes. Representative Carroll, do we have a motion to move the minutes?
So moved.
All right, Representative Carroll moves the minutes. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion prevails. The minutes are approved. So first on the agenda today is House File 4. As members remember, we did hear this last week, but due to some discussion and wanted to make sure we get this right and that this committee is the one to address the data issues that are in this bill. We've got it back in front of us. So I will move that House File 4 be recommended to be referred to the Committee on Ways and Means. Representative Gomez and Perez Vega. You've got an author's amendment. So I will move the A21 amendment. Representative Gomez, please tell us about your amendment.
Good morning, Chair Becker-Finn, members of the committee. Judiciary and Civil Law treated us so nice, we had to come back to visit you again. Basically, after we passed the amendment, it was a week ago, it came to our attention that there were some issues that needed to be addressed from Driver and Vehicle Services. And so I just want to thank your nonpartisan staff for working really hard on this. Thank you so much, Mr. Hopkins, for your assistance. And Representative Scott has been involved in these conversations. And if you don't mind, I would love to ask Mr. Hopkins to walk through the A21 instead of doing it myself, if that's okay.
That's why he's here. All right, Mr. Hopkins.
Madam Chair and members, so the A21 amendment, I'll go through it line by line and kind of try to summarize it briefly for the committee. So you can see this is all going to affect Article 2 of the second engrossment of the bill, which deals with data protections. At 1.2 of the amendment, it's deleting the current section 2 of Article 2, so it's getting rid of that 14-day data destruction requirements. Then it adds some new sections. The first section you see requires subscribers to the driver's license data subscription services to include information about compliance with the certification requirement in their audits. The next section that's added, you can see the new language at 1.16 of the amendments. This also adds a cross-reference to that requirement for certification for when someone requests data on non-compliant licenses. At the bottom of page 2 of the amendment, most of these changes are to that certification requirements. And one thing that it does is it makes clear that a data requester, it changes the term person to data requester. So we know that the data that could mean a government entity, it could mean a non-natural person or a natural person, i.e. a human being. And the real meat of the amendment is on page 3 of the amendment. And this is giving us a new subdivision 11, which is the primary data practices subdivision for this bill. Paragraph A there on page 3, starting on line 5, gives a definition of immigration status data. So this is data on non-compliant license holders that will indicate their immigration or lawful presence status. The paragraph B classifies immigration status data as private data on individuals and says that it should not be shared outside of the division that administers driver's licenses, but it may be shared with the Secretary of State for purposes of improving voter registration records. The new paragraph C, starting on 3.19, this allows dissemination and sharing of non-compliant license data that is not immigration status data. So data on non-compliant license holders, which does not indicate anything about lawful presence or immigration status. That allows data sharing that's otherwise authorized by state or federal law, but it provides that that information cannot be used for any civil immigration enforcement purposes or disclosed to any federal government entity that enforces immigration law. Paragraph D, starting on 3.27. This prohibits any data sharing between the Department of Public Safety, which administers the driver's licenses, or a driver's license agent, and a federal government entity that enforces immigration law. So immigration status data or any other data on non-compliant license holder can't be shared to federal government entities that enforce immigration law. And then paragraph E just clarifies that a violation of this subdivision here could give rise to penalties and remedies under the Data Practices Act. Madam Chair, that's it for the amendment.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hopkins. Anything further you want to say about the amendment, Representative Gomez or Representative Perez Vega?
No, I think they kind of covered it. I think that, you know, on the third page, that paragraph C just allows DVS to share the data that they need to share and that they are accustomed to sharing about non-compliant licenses. And so I think that was sort of the concern that we were trying to address.
Sounds good. Any discussion to the amendment? Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I had some very spur of the moment and rather lengthy conversations yesterday with folks from the Secretary of State. And I'm wondering if they could come forward so I could just get a couple things on the record from those conversations. So while she's coming down here, we're having discussions with them at DPS as to how this sharing of data actually happens in practicality. And so I'm just wondering if our testifier from the Secretary of State's office could kind of walk through for the committee so they have an understanding of how that works and how this amendment will practically play out. Thanks, Madam
Please
Chair.
introduce yourself for the record and go ahead.
Julie Strother, opposite the Secretary of State. So right now we get two files. One is a daily file on those who are registering at the time of getting a license, and one is a monthly file of non-citizens who have a driver's license. And my understanding, DVS can verify, but this would allow us to keep getting that data that we need to keep our voter records as clean and as accurate as possible.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Chair Becker-Finn. And Ms. Strother, right? Yeah, thank you. And so in our conversations yesterday, we talked about whether all of that was still doable, and we came to the conclusion that it is. And I do have one question that I didn't ask because I talked to a county commissioner last night, and they actually were saying that there's nothing explicitly in statute that says that the Secretary of State has to update the rolls on data that they get from the health department when people pass away. So I'm wondering if there is anything in statute currently that requires the Secretary of State to update the voter rolls in this regard. Is that your responsibility in statute? Is it the county? Is it clear? If you could answer that question, thank you.
Ms. Strother, remembering that trying to keep to this amendment in this bill, but go ahead.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Representative, so under statute, and I believe it's 201.145, and I'm hoping that someone with the statute book in front of me can check that for me, but there is a section of statute about how we deal with data from other agencies, and we are required to, with DVS data in particular, match that data against the voter registration system, send those exact matches or potential matches, in this case on potential non-citizens, to the counties. It's the county's job, and they have a statutory obligation to review that data if there appears to be a match, to put a challenge on the voter record and then send it to a county attorney for further investigation. So it's our obligation to do the matching and take in that data in the system. It's the county's obligation because we don't update voter registration records, but we provide the data to the counties who have an obligation to then update that.
Thank you, Madam
Scott. Any further
Thank you, Ms.
discussion to the A21 amendment? And thank you, Ms. Strother. All right, seeing no further discussion, I will renew my motion to adopt the A21 amendment. All those in favor? Aye. Oppose? The motion prevails, the amendment is adopted. So with that, since we've already had a full House File 4 hearing, we will go ahead and vote on House File 4 as amended again. So I would renew my motion that House File 4 as amended be recommended to be referred to the Committee on Ways and Means. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
The motion prevails. Thank you for coming back again at 8:30 in the morning.
Still not working.
We're having some technical difficulties, but we're learning what fun sounds our government issued computers are capable of. So,
There you go. Sounds like an arcade.
Madam Speaker,
Chair, but yes,
Madam Chair, sorry. Question, I'm having trouble hearing when testifiers
Yeah.
are at that far microphone. So while we're waiting for the next bill, I don't know if there's a way to adjust that or just make sure that the testifiers pull it down closer.
our pages are checking into it. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
So next up on the agenda is House File 100. I don't see Representative Stevenson yet. So I'm going to go ahead and move House File 100 and hope that he is in the elevator and yeah, we'll teach people what happens when you're not here for your bill. I think a lot of folks who looked at the calendar today saw House File 4 and didn't realize that we'd already heard the bill. So we're thinking there was more to do, but we already did all that work. So good job, everybody. Do we have somebody from nonpartisan here? Oh yeah, you're the cannabis guy. I forgot, Ben. All right. So I will move House File 100 be recommended to be referred to the Environment and Natural Resources Finance and Policy Committee